Hey. So it's really difficult, but I want to talk to you about about what white people can do, um, kind of related to helping to advocate and protect black people, the black people in our lives. I've really waited. I've actually taped this like 5 times, and I've waited to discuss it because it's so personal, it's so difficult to talk about, and because I felt like it was really important to give black people the stage to talk about their experiences before like white voices like mine chimed in. It's not that my opinion doesn't matter, it's that um, black voices are not amplified as much as white voices. So when things happen that talk to black people, or that happen to black people, the best way to learn about them is to listen to black people. But I think there's a phrase that I keep seeing that I love, that white silence is white violence. And it's true, because as a white person, I have different privileges and advantages that are because I'm white. And it's my responsibility to use that to help other people. And so what I wanted to talk about was when I was 26, I moved to Durham, North Carolina, with Matthew. We were just dating at the time. But it was pretty serious. But I was looking for a job, and I got a job working as a mental health nurse in a community setting. I worked as an RN taking care of people who had severe and persistent schizophrenia, and I worked with them in the community. So I was part of a team of doctors, nurses, and social workers, and we would go to people's homes and we would have them like in our car. And as a nurse, I would take them to doctor's appointments. I would give them their injections of antipsychotic medications. I would help them with like diabetes management. And so I was very intimate with these people. I would see some of them every week. And I worked that job for about a year, and I would still be doing it if we hadn't moved. I really loved it. I was working in Wake County, which is like the capital of North Carolina, and my job was going into strangers' houses by myself. So like everyone who loved me was pretty concerned about that. I'm a 5'3" white woman, and just because I'm like a girl, people didn't want me going into houses with strange men, which, fair enough. And I was often going into very poor parts of the county and parts that had significant crime. And a lot of those neighborhoods were predominantly African American. So when I'd been at the job not very long, I was talking to the director, and he had been doing mental health work in that county for like 30 years. He was really well respected. He was a very cool dude. I guess he was in his 60s, and he was this really tall, thin, white guy. And he was always really honest with me. And one day I asked him, I'm going into neighborhoods that are almost all African American. Do I need to worry, about violence towards me? Because I am going into other people's homes, other people's neighborhoods, and it feels weird. And he said, actually, it's the opposite. Your whiteness will protect you. Nobody wants to have a dead white nurse in their neighborhood. And they know that you're there to help. And you'll be fine. You'll be totally safe. And he was right. I worked with patients who were often actively hallucinating, people who were a danger to themselves and others. I was pretty scared of some of my white male patients who would threaten me physically. But going into the black neighborhoods, I was always safe. I, um, I wore plain clothes, I didn't wear scrubs. So, um, it was our job to kind of fly under the radar to protect patient privacy. But it was obvious to people why I was there, and people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, are you Johnny's nurse?" I say, "Well, yeah, I'm here to see Johnny." And they go, "Oh, let me find him for you." And people would just find these men and women who were like out doing whatever. And I went inside people's homes. I was a part of their lives, and they were really important to me. I held their kids, and um, I took them out to lunch when they got their GEDs. And, you know, all of my patients were very special to me. And I used my whiteness to advocate for my patients on an almost daily basis. They would tell me about their landlord or their doctor or whomever who had not treated them respectfully. And I would go to those places with my glowing white body, and I would say, "Hi, I'm a friend of Johnny's, and I wanted to speak to you about something." And those problems cleared up 100% of the time. I was able to use the trust that I had with my patients to make their lives dramatically better by advocating for them and with them. I would go to them with them to doctor's appointments and make sure that if they were in pain, they were being treated for pain, because doctors notoriously don't believe that African Americans feel pain the same as white people. That, like, look at the studies, it's bonkers. So, I guess how can this translate into action for me and for you and for everyone? My whiteness protects me, and so I am called to use my whiteness as a shield for people who don't have that. I didn't do anything to earn it. It's just the roll of the dice I was born with. But I've never been stopped by a police officer for no reason. I've never been followed in a store. I have more access to financial resources than my black friends and neighbors. If it's hard for me to talk about this because it makes me feel so emotional and so upset. If nothing else, I would encourage you to speak up if you are white, to speak up when you hear things that you know are wrong. That, using your whiteness as a shield doesn't have to mean that you go to protests and you march. That's not something that I'm doing right now, which I have really mixed feelings about, because I am a primary caregiver to my children. Like, that's it. That's my full-time job. I am donating. I'm doing things in other ways, but if you're a white person and you see a situation that is hurtful for black people, I believe it's your job to say something. If you see a black person stopped by a policeman or woman, to go over and just to peacefully watch to make sure there isn't brutality. If you hear your family calling it a riot, say it's not a riot, it's a protest. It's a constitutionally protected right. And to talk to your kids about what's happening, to talk to your parents, your grandparents. Every time I will lose a white friend, if it means that my black friends don't question how I feel about them, and that they don't question that they are worth just as much to me, and that they matter. I would encourage you, if you haven't in your life, to think about it. Have you lived your life in a way that people maybe aren't sure whose side you're on? Because don't live like that. Be on the side of people who need help, who need representation. Black lives matter. Black lives are vital and cherished and part of what makes American fabric so diverse and beautiful. So, if you haven't yet, think about whose side you're on, and I hope that you side with people who need your protection. So yeah, I'll say it every day. Black Lives Matter, and yeah, I guess that's all I got. We have to keep pushing, keep fighting to have everyone have equal protection under the law. All right, thanks.